As a child, what genuinely terrified you? I was terrified that I would look up and see someone staring at me through a window when I was alone at night. I used to lay in bed at night and realize that one day I would be dead and no longer exist. Being in any well-lit room, with uncovered windows, after dark, especially if in unfamiliar neighborhoods, because of the dark, I dog, that my dog would get taken by a dog catcher. In kids' movies the dog catcher is always the bad guy. I was terrified of teachers. I ended up being an excellent student because I would pay utmost attention in class, complete everything on time, score top marks. All this because I was terrified of them scolding me. Automatic toilets. I would randomly get it into my head that the end of the world was going to happen. Something along the lines of the rapture or some sort of apocalypse. There'd be nights when I'd stay up and just wait for the end to come because I was somehow so convinced that it was 100% happening. My uncle, not making it home before the streetlights came on. Not only was it, like, the main rule of life during childhood, but I was very convinced it was an arrestable offense to be out after the streetlights came on. As in, the streetlights come on but you're still a block and a half from home, so cops instantaneously come out in swarms to surround you and put you in the back of a cop car. And mirrors. I was always terrified something would come out from the other side, or worse, my reflection will come to get me. I distinctly remember that I would shower and always keep an eye on the mirror, just to make sure nothing was coming through the gateway. Chickens : left parenthesis. My parents were religious, and told me the prayer / teenagers. I truly had a phobia of them. I learned at a young age how little self-control they had. I was so afraid of them and what they might do. The year 2000, I was terrified about it. I would get super anxious about it whenever it came up. My mom bought me a shirt with a spaceship and it had a 2000 on it. I would not wear the shirt cause it would be a constant reminder of its impending doom. I was scared that the floor would disappear and I would fall to my death. I had hypnic jerk back then, so I was convinced that feeling would show up at any time. When I was younger I was deathly afraid of clowns until my dad took me to this type of amusement park that turns Halloween themed in October. Around my birthday, obviously they had scary clowns and zombies everywhere, so I stayed as close to my dad as possible, but as the night went on I started to see the same clowns over and over again and they started recognizing me and waving because they noticed I was scared, and I realized they were just regular people, and ever since I haven't been afraid of clowns. I had a driving phobia for a short period. Every time I got into a vehicle I thought we were going to die, especially when my older brother had his learner's permit and it being kidnapped. My parents have always been extremely overprotective, and as a little girl they always told me to never ever leave their side, so whenever I was without them my heart would beat incredibly fast and I'd pray to not get kidnapped. I was pretty traumatized by all the things they kept making up. It was quite wrong of them. My closet, loud noises, hated the lawnmower, going to sleep if it was raining out. I thought I would drown when the water reached my windows. That my mother was going to leave me and take off with any man she met. Mind you, my mother and stepfather have been married since I was 2, but this feeling began when I was around 4. If she talked to any man, be it my babysitter's 18-year-old son, or her best friend's 40-year-old husband, I would worry incessantly that she would take off with the guy and leave me. It faded with time and age, but I occasionally wonder where that came from in my little brain. The number 0, oddly enough. The THX sound freaking terrified me. Not being accepted into heaven when I die. Leaping away from my family. I didn't stay over at a friend's house successfully until I was in the 5th grade. Vampires. This was before vampires were all blended out and made to be seemingly cool. There was just Dracula, who was evil and terrifying. Horses. I was deathly afraid a passing smoker would throw out a cigarette butt and it would somehow light our large enough that you would definitely notice a fire before it got to the house, lawn on fire, and it would spread to the house. I couldn't. Darkness. Seriously, I remember 5 year myself, left home alone with all doors closed, parents went to their jobs, sister went to school, and it was 7 p.m. I remember I was feeling some kind of anxiety, watching TV, then lights shut off. Damn, Twilight, silence, and I, sitting alone in my room, felt so terrifying, I started crying. Fortunately 10 minutes after it, parents came back. Chucky. Those holes in the curb for sewer drainage. I had many nightmares about those things. Lightning and thunder. My mom used to tell me if I don't be a good boy then I will be kidnapped by some unknown person. Nuclear war. The prospect of eternal punishment. Poltergeist. I saw it at my neighbor's house when I was definitely too young for it. Nightmare City. Toilet snakes. When you flush the toilet, it hisses as the cistern refills. The only obvious explanation is that the cistern is full of snakes, and flushing wakes them up and makes them angry. The car wash and unsolved mysteries. Whenever curtains or blinds were drawn at night in my house as a kid, I was always worried that Frankenstein's monster would just appear and be staring at me. If I'd see that I have a complete view out of a window or glass door, I would run from one end of the room to the other, avoiding eye contact with the exposed door/window as much as possible. The gray ones P equals. That mother freaking child catcher in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. That if the rapture happened, I would be taken to heaven without ever seeing my stuffed animals again. I slept with a knife under my pillow, so if Jesus came back I would be able to cut my way out of the clouds. I had to have been very young, maybe 4 or 5, but the fear of being in heaven and not having my valued possessions terrified me. Pretty sure my paranoia got way worse after my parents showed me the movie Left Behind. Brown recluse spiders. I thought they'd make my skin rot and fall off. Scared of vampires in my closet, scared of the house catching on fire, scared of getting pink eye and my eyes become glued shut forever, scared of being kidnapped, and the list goes on. I have anxiety now. When I was first starting to ski, like 5 or 6 years old, I was terrified of the chairlift because I thought that when you get to the top that it would drop you from like 10 meters in the air and kill you, and that the people who were skiing back down were basically like cloned robots if ever went up the lift. I do not know what I was smoking back then, but I sure had one hell of an imagination. I was sitting in my room once when I was about 7 years old. It was 2 weeks before my 8th birthday and I was expecting a new video game console from my parents. In the meantime, I was trying to determine what I should do with my old version. I had considered selling it, but I was only 7 so I didn't. Insects. A cricket had me trapped in the basement for hours. I didn't see it ... but I could hear it by the stairs. I saw this movie where an asteroid hit Earth. I started bawling my eyes out because it made me think about everyone dying, mainly my parents. Feels like a weird thing to make a 7-year-old cry lol. And lights in a dark room. My first bedroom, I didn't have a bedside lamp or anything, and the thermostat had a red light on it. I was convinced it was watching me. Used to try to stare it down. Jeepers creepers. It's so cheesy now, but as a 2nd grader I was absolutely terrified. My parents dying and leaving me an orphan. Getting home. Having my abusive parents come home, especially early. Hearing someone at the door, car door shutting, or jingling keys still gives me anxiety attacks nearly 2 decades later. What would happen if I took a booger for one nostril and stuck it back in the other nostril? I have no idea why, but I convinced myself that it would lead to immediate sickness and a quick death. Completely bizarre, but errors facing me when I sleep. Still have an issue with this as an adult. My aunt's turkey. The closet door not fully closed. Tornadoes. Watching Twister in 5th grade or so really freaked me up. For years after I thought every single storm would cause a tornado right on top of us, even worse if it was at night. Sleep paralysis. Dreaming that I was awake and someone was in my room and I couldn't. I remember when the Saudi Arabian flag scared me a lot as a kid. I don't. Airplane toilets. I was scared that it would suck my chuckles out of the plane and fall through the sky. Volcanoes. Naturally because I grew up in Houston. My mom. She would beat me until she was satisfied I was genuinely in pain and liked to tell me she wished I was never born. 1D things that could be in the dark. 2 Freddy Krueger coming out of the wall above my bed. First nightmare movie. Didn't get a full night's sleep for years after watching it. My ex-stepdad. Roller coasters. Saw a movie where everyone on the coaster died. Still don't ride roller coasters, even though I have hundreds of hours playing RCD. Stepping on a used needle. I had crossover nightmares of stepping on them mixed with the Martian Chronicles. Going down the drain after taking a bath. I always had to be taken out of the tub before anyone could let the water out. I was terrified I'd go down that drain with the water. Psychologist subreddit, what does that mean? Dying. I would have terrible dreams and would think about it all the time. I remember being about 9 and running through every religion. Marilyn Manson. I went to Catholic school and they had me brainwashed. I was really scared of being possessed and the devil. The cover of Antichrist Superstar was so scary to me and the whole rip thing. In high school, I was into a lot of metal. Turns out I like that album. Narrate. I was so scared of the dark when I was a child I made my poor mother sit outside my door till I fell asleep. R.L. Stein books, particularly the one about that evil dummy. The sound of the toilet flushing terrified me. My best friend's father, Denny's, I was sure with a name like that, he had to be a dentist. Whenever my friend said his dad was coming home, I would run out of their house back to mine. I realized when I was 10 that he was actually nice, managed a clothing store, and would likely never pull my teeth out, even if I asked him to. My brother, violent sociopathic drug addict. In first grade I made a friend with an imagination as overactive as my own. We, mostly she, created this alternate reality where there were these creatures in the shape of arrows all over. Some were kind, some more malevolent. I leaned into this so much I became seriously afraid of these imaginary arrow creatures all over. I believe I would be. I wanted to be a paleontologist more than anything until I was about 7 and saw my first 3D movie, which featured a giant T-Rex skeleton running out of the screen, directly at my little face. I had to leave the theater page 0. The basement. My house had the creepiest basement. It was also one of those where you had to go outside to get to the basement and it had the 2 doors. Also, just the whole lower half of the house at night was creepy as frick. I was like 12 or 13 at the time, but numbers stations. The weird radio frequencies that play various beeps and voices for mostly unknown reason. No idea why, and they still scare me a little. Clowns. Any interaction with a clown made my nose bleed. I'd get so upset. Probably had something to do with my mom decorating my room in a clown theme and choosing the creepiest clown painting ever to hang right over my bed. Mom was so proud of her decorating skills that rather than remove the painting, she allowed me to sleep anywhere in the house. I don't think I spent one night in that bed the entire 2 years we lived there. Domestic violence. Goats. I refused to go into petting zoos. I think it's the creepy eyes. The witches in Roald Dahl. I always had a recurring dream about King Kong. He would eat people and spit out their clothes. I don't. The tunnel scene in the first Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. The scene in Temple of Doom where the guy gets his still beating heart ripped out. Nightmares for a week. Dentists. The deep end of the pool. The movie /Critters / the old lady under my bed. Not joking. Witches and pirates. I was terrified that a witch with a wooden peg leg, a hook and a hand with 5 sabers instead of fingers would come and get me. Why saber finger hand? I guess 5 sabers was more terrifying than 1. I used to think someone could see through my bathroom window. The window is very high up and bare. I saw time into Grady on Halloween at a usher from another clash dressed sausage with green face paint on burst into the room screaming and cackling so loud he actually cashed out. Hearing your mom get home drunk and then going upstairs to her bedroom. The bed would start squeaking and I could feel it shaking. Soon the /all would. When my mom talked about the idea of reincarnation, that put me in a freaked out funk. The thought of having lived many lives and not remembering them, as well as the idea that I would eventually not remember my current life at all. The idea actually sounds kind of nice as an adult. Closing my eyes in the shower and having someone grab me. Cockroaches, especially when they start flying. And I thought I would encounter it frequently as I got older. Doctor Who. That was when it was good. Voice box devices. When I was a kid, my family took a day trip to some village. We walked into this shop, I heard this man talking with a voice box, and I walked right back out. I refused to go back in. They still really catch me off guard, but at least now I know what they are and why people may have them. Clowns. I'm 34 now, and I can still vividly remember the clown the bakery I went to hired for a family fair in the parking lot when I was 3 or 4. Freaked me out so bad I ran inside the building and hid under a table. Even worse was the clown portrait my parents had hanging in the hallway for years growing up. I never looked that thing in the eyes when I walked by it. Never saw it, either the original or the remake, and I think I'll cash because I don't need my phobia returning, thanks law. Dogs, got bit by once as a young child and could never trust them. Movie Beetlejuice. I couldn't. An asteroid hitting Earth. It was super irrational, but it scared the she-eyes out of me for years. My face in the mirror, especially if I widened my eyes and stared at myself. I felt like if not my reflection, then something else was gonna jump at me. Windows. Sounds strange, but there's a story. About when I was 7 or 8, my mom had been taking a nap on the couch and asked me to take her pillow back to her room. It's about 9 p.m. at night and there's a long hallway that leads to nothing but my parents' bedroom. As I'm turning the corner and am facing directly towards the window on the opposite side of the room, the window shatters and I run back to my mom crying terrified. My mom walks to the room and checks everything out but doesn't notice the window is broken. So she just thought I was just being scared of the dark. Well, my brother is a bit more suspicious and had this weird gimmicky flip phone with a *night. Mom, she convinced me it was legal for parents to kill their children. One time I saw a ghost with red eyes that looked exactly like my older sister, however I didn't think much of it and turned away. I then looked back after a realization of what I saw and I immediately went to my big sister and asked if she came downstairs, however she did not. My family believes it was my imagination because I was 5, however every dog we ever owned have at least barked in that same spot I saw that figure, and sometimes I think this house is haunted and that ghost was checking me out. Rock. A goddamn rock. The hilarious part of it is I was a kid who watched the first 2 Jurassic Park movies so much I knew them both word for word by the time I was 5. So what was so bad about this rock, I hear you ask? It had a face. This was when Thomas the Tank Engine moved away from making episodes based on the kids' stories and started writing their own episodes. As part of this, they decided to make a bunch of /spooky /episodes. From memory, the basic premise of the episode is that they make a new quarry at a spot where a giant round boulder sits on top and one of the engines has a creepy feeling it's watching him. Most of the episode I was fine with. The boulder just sits there like this *left link, but then a couple of times they hint it's actually sentient and they show it with his face *left link, and I'd always scream and hide behind the couch. Looking back, I think what they did was superimpose one of the trains and faces onto it, but it gives some real uncanny valley she-eyes. I was fine with talking trains and faces, but a weird rock that doesn't speak and occasionally looks angry, frick no. Perhaps the most hilarious part of all this is I ended up studying geology. Take that, you freaking rock. Adulthood. Being naked in front of someone. When I was 6 or so, I thought a leopard lived under my bed. After I brushed my teeth, I would open my door, sprint toward my bed, and jump on it so that it didn't. Anytime I saw death, I mean with the black cloak and the scythe, I couldn't sleep for days. The THX intro. The movie It. My father. My one on a daily basis. When I really freaked out, my dad. The sound of severe thunderstorms. The Bermuda Triangle. This may sound weird, but wasps. When I was around 5, I had a wasp fly into my mouth and stung me numerous times. Was probably the single most painful experience of my life. I couldn't eat or drink properly for weeks. I used to have panic attacks around like any insect that made a buzzing sound. Being in an unfamiliar place. I didn't find out why until I was well into adulthood, but even years after that it's not much better. Courage the Cowardly Dog. The prospect of nuclear war. My dad was a soldier and I knew web. Existing alone, I have abandonment issues. For some reason I was afraid that if we drove over a bridge, the bridge would collapse and we'd all end up in the river under it. Maybe I was really afraid of being trapped in the car and drowning.